Welcome back to the Payne CFB show where we talk all things college football. I'm your host, Tyler Payne, and in this episode, we're going to be discussing some of the conference realignments and kind of what that means for college football and what that's going to look like in 2024. Let's get right into it. So episode 3 of the Payne CFB show is here, and I'm joined by Cason Mayberry. How you doing today, Cason?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's always a good day when you get to talk college football.
No, I agree with that 100%. Couldn't agree more. Like I said in the intro, today we're going to be talking about some of the conference realignments and kind of what that's going to look like, our predictions for some of those teams in the new conferences, and we're just going to be talking about it overall, what we feel, how we feel about it, and we're just going to get right into it. So obviously the first one that comes to mind, Texas and Oklahoma are coming to the SEC. Personally, I think one team will succeed this year. I don't know how the other team's going to do. What is your take on Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC?
I think it's a big change for the SEC, but I think it's a positive change for the SEC. I mean, my team's in the SEC. I'm a huge SEC guy, and I'm super excited for them to come in. I think Texas is going to succeed, and Oklahoma's not going to succeed as much. Do I think Oklahoma is going to win 3 games? No. I think they're still going to come in and do the same thing that the program's always done. I know they're losing Gabriel, so it's going to be a little tougher for them, especially losing their starting quarterback and coming into the SEC. But I like what it does for college football as a whole. I think it's going to give us a couple more competitive games. Like, you're going to get to see Oklahoma playing teams like Florida, and that's just going to be super fun matchups. I mean, Texas, they're supposed to be national contenders, so, I mean, it's good to see national contenders in the best conference in football.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really interested to see how Oklahoma does in particular because personally, if you would have told me 2 or 3 years ago that Texas was joining the SEC, I would have said, I'm not really sure they can make it in this league. But then last year you saw them go to Bryant-Denny Stadium and upset Alabama, and now we're thinking, okay, they could probably survive here. So I'm not really worried about Texas. I am, however, worried about Oklahoma because of what you said. They don't have Dylan Gabriel anymore. He went to Oregon. They are very high on Jackson Arnold, though, a quarterback that they brought in. I think he's a redshirt freshman or an upcoming sophomore. Either way, it's his second or third year in the program, so they're really high on him. We'll see what he does. But, yeah, I'm interested to see what both teams do. But I definitely – out of the two, I definitely have more confidence in Texas.
Is Texas going into the West and Oklahoma going into the East? Is that how it's?
As far as I know, they're doing away, at least momentarily, they're doing away with the divisions this year, and it's going to be just a pool of like 16 SEC teams, and the top 2 teams that finish in the SEC, they play for the title.
Really?
The
SEC
that's
fun. I mean, you'll get some SEC matchups that you don't usually get, which will be great.
And they'll still keep the good rivalries like the Texas and Oklahoma Red River rivalry. They'll keep that, and they'll keep the SEC rivalries as well. But like you said, we'll get to see Oklahoma and Texas play different teams in the SEC, and it'll be really good for college football fans and just college football in general because you get better games on Saturdays. You're not watching Alabama play MTSU. You're watching Alabama play Oklahoma or Texas or something.
We're playing Georgia in the 4th game of the season this year. I mean, that's going to be –
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I mean, that's awesome. So the SEC, we'll see what happens there. Here's an interesting thing as well. I know that USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington are supposedly going to the Big Ten. I had to look all this up because I couldn't remember all the alignments, I'll be honest. But they're all 4 going to the Big Ten. That's going to really shake things up there because normally you have the Big 3 with Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. How is this going to change that up north?
I see it having a little bit of an impact. I don't see it having as big of an impact as sort of the SEC. I think this is where Lincoln Riley's career goes to die in the Big Ten. He's going to get exposed for not being a very good coach.
Yeah.
I think Washington is going to struggle a lot. I think Ohio State is still, if they don't win the national championship this year, Day's got to be gone.
Absolutely.
This is their best team possibly they've ever had, and that's saying something for sure. I think Michigan will be fine. I like the head coach coming in. He did a great job replacing Harbaugh last season. And, I mean, they're Michigan. They're always going to have 4 and 5 stars out there. That's just how the program works. So I don't see it having as big of an impact as something like the SEC or the Big 12 because I feel like the teams coming in are all kind of on the decline, and the teams that are already there are really still going up somehow. So I think it'll kind of be a little like wake-up call for those Western teams out in California.
No, I agree with that. It's interesting when they first announced all this, I thought, well, what about teams in different sports like a soccer or a volleyball who have to have multiple games during the week? What if they have to go? What if you've got USC traveling to Rutgers on a Monday and then on a Wednesday they got to go back and play Michigan at Michigan? Like that's a lot of traveling, and I don't even know if you could possibly do that in that short a time frame, travel and do those games. So it was interesting. It was confusing to me when they first announced it, but as far as the football side of things, I do kind of like it because I like to see games like an Oregon, Ohio State. That's going to be coming up in 2024.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that's at Ohio State or at Oregon. Either way, it doesn't matter. That's going to be a heck of a ball game.
Oregon's the only team coming into the Big Ten that I really believe, kind of like Texas, can hang around with those guys.
Yeah.
I think the rest of them are going to struggle, but seeing Oregon getting to play teams like Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, that's just, again, good for the fan, the average college football fan.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to see some of these games that are, and I can't even remember all the marquee matchups that we have, but it just creates, like I said earlier, for better games, and that's going to be really fun to watch. Let's just address the elephant in the room. Sooner or later, it's going to be 2 power conferences. It's going to be like the NFL. It's going to be the North and South. I don't know what they're going to do about that. It's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten. So those are the conferences that really matter right now. The Pac-12's already gone. I'm sure the Big 12 and the ACC is not far behind them.
I see the ACC going before that. I mean, we saw a team that went undefeated in the ACC still missed the playoffs. That's how weak that conference is. I mean, you had Dabo Swinney pretty much carrying the conference on his back for 8 years, and now that they're not what they were once was, I mean, it's hard for the college football committee to continue to allow and breed that and promote that when they know it's not their best product. Right. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. And apparently, Cal, SMU, and Stanford are joining the ACC this year. To me, that does absolutely nothing.
Does absolutely nothing. I mean, Stanford, they have years where they're good. I mean, if we're not going to talk about the last 2 years, if we're talking about them being good, obviously.
Right.
But Stanford and, Cal will get their one yearly crazy upset that they do every single year, that the game goes into double overtime and it's like 10 p.m. at night and they're winning. Yeah. They'll have that. But like you said, I don't see very much of an impact at all. I just think they didn't have anywhere else for those teams to go, so they would just throw them to the ACC.
Right. It's the Pac-12. They're falling apart. Like you said, they don't have anywhere else for them to go. So they got Cal, who's a West Coast team, going all the way across the country and playing teams like Clemson and Florida State.
So it is for all sports?
As far as I know, it is for all sports,
That's
which is nuts.
Crazy, yeah.
I mean, geographically, this makes no sense at all.
I mean, I'm sure schools aren't happy about that because they're having to raise a lot more funding for the program, because then you're talking private jets multiple times a week.
Yes.
I mean, multiple times a week for multiple teams. Like, I mean, there's a crossover in March where you have softball, baseball, basketball, and I want to say tennis all playing at the exact same, and golf all playing at the exact same time. So, I mean, you're shelling out jets for 5 teams, probably 5 times a week. That's a huge strain on a university.
No, I agree. It's just wild. It's going to be, I think this year is more of a, let's just kind of wait it out and see, and just trial and error year. And then they'll make decisions based off of this year for the future of college football. But it'll be an interesting year of college football. The world's gonna get turned upside down from what we're used to. Yeah. Which, who knows, that might be good or bad. We'll see.
I like the mergings though. If you put the financial and I guess the students' mindsets aside, just for a fan perspective, I like it because it kind of stops the promotion of bad teams being in the top 10,
Yeah.
Penn State being top 5 every single year, but we know they're not going to finish top 5 and make the playoffs. Like, it stops that sort of. It kind of halts that. I mean, sure, there's going to be one or two teams, but, I mean, you got these past 5 years, we've seen we've seen Notre Dame in the top 10 for almost the entire length of the season last year, and they lost 5 games.
Yeah.
So I like the fact that it stops that kind of promotion of bad teams being ranked highly.
That's a good point. No, I agree with you. I had Penn State at 5 on episode 1 of the top 10 teams going into college
My
football.
bad.
And I'm going to tell you right now, I have had so much backlash from that pick. I've had so much just, what are you thinking? It's like, well, evidently, I don't know anything about college football. Anyway, maybe this shouldn't be the T-Payne CFB show. I don't know what it should be called. This is just the T-Payne show at this point. But here's what I know for the Big 12. Arizona, Utah, Arizona State, and Deion Sanders' Colorado Buffaloes, they're headed to the Big 12, which is kind of weird. But to me, the teams that were already in the Big 12, the 4 teams that entered there last year, which were UCF, Houston, BYU, and the 4th one is slipping my mind. This happens every time. I always label these teams off, and I forget one of them. I can't remember.
I mean,
anyway,
it's hard. They're all getting a lot of teams.
Right, there's so much shifting around. But anyway, that entire Big 12 conference, to me, they're all teams that are below average, and maybe slightly above average at best. I mean, they're all just right in there at the same pool, which could be good. It could be more competitive, but at the same time, you don't have that. The big dog is not in that conference at all. The big dog, you could make a case for Utah being there, but I mean, is that really a dominant powerhouse in that conference? I mean, it's an interesting conference.
I mean, I think Utah is. I mean, with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, I think Utah is the best team in the Big 12.
Me too.
I mean,
100%.
by far, I think they're the best team. I mean, you have teams. I like Oklahoma State, who had DJ Uiagalelei, and then now he's gone.
Yep.
And so it's just like, I feel like players go to teams in the Big 12 to make a name so they can transfer to the SEC or the Big 10. That's what you do. Or, I mean, you go play somewhere like Oregon. But obviously, they're coming into the Big 10 now. I think it's a good thing for Colorado. I mean, they played a lot of competitive teams last year, but every single game should be competitive, and they'll be nationally televised for every single game. I mean, sure, they won 5 games last year, or was it 4 games?
Who was it?
I don't think they
Colorado
made a
went
bowl.
4-8, I believe.
Yeah, they went 4-8, but they lost like 5 of those games in like a 10-point margin. I mean, and they took great teams right to the end. They almost beat USC. I mean, they should have beat them. So I like the games that are going to come out of it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I have no interest in it, because, I mean, I'm going to enjoy seeing Colorado playing Utah. I'm going to enjoy seeing Colorado play Baylor. Like, it's going to be good, fun games for a fan, but overall, I don't think it has as big of an impact as, obviously, the teams coming into the Big Ten and in the SEC.
Yeah, it's not as attractive as a switch as a Texas, Oklahoma, or Oregon, USC going to the Big Ten. It's not as attractive as some of those, but I think it will provide some more competition for that conference. But like I said, it doesn't seem like there's a powerhouse in there unless you say that it's Utah. So I'm with you. I think Utah can win that conference with ease. If they play like they should, and if Cam Rising comes back and plays like he should and is capable of, I think they will win that conference with ease.
Yeah.
But
I would consider Big 12 to be the new Pac-12. That's
a good comparison.
Because I'm going to see Arizona State as probably playing Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and it's 45-55.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just big scoring games. So, like, it may not look as attractive to the eye, but then when you're watching on Saturday, you're going to get to see some great games.
No, that's a good point. That's a good comparison. I've never really thought about it like that, but that might have been the mindset of the College Football Committee when they did that switch. This is kind of like more of the new Pac-12, but it is sad to see the Pac-12 go. There were some good teams that came out of that conference, and even last year, I think that was one of the stronger conferences in football. They had a lot of offense over there. Last year. And even the lower tier teams like Washington State or somebody, they could slip. If you were slipping up, they could beat you on any given night with Cam Ward, who's now at Miami. But anyway, Cason, I think we got a little bit of time left. Let's talk about some of the playoff extensions, the 12-team playoff. What's kind of your opinion on that? Is that good or bad for college football in your opinion?
I think it's going to be one of those things where you have to sit and tell. You have to wait to see. But off first thoughts, I think it's good. People will say like we're tired of seeing the same 4 teams in every year, but
Right.
I mean, extending to 12, you're probably going to see those 4 teams more and more and more in the final 2 games. People don't really look at that. It's kind of like when inflation happens and you're like, oh, minimum wage rises, but all the prices go up too. So it doesn't matter really.
Yeah.
I mean, when Alabama loses a home game in the middle of the season, they're still going to get in the playoffs, and then they're still going to beat those teams that you thought was better than them
Exactly.
and should have got in over them.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting to see how they do the different like conference champions get so and so seeds, and then everybody else just kind of fills in. That's going to create some interesting matchups, and teams like a Florida State will get in this time instead of being snubbed after going 12-0. But I think it's good in some ways. We'll see. To me, like I mentioned earlier, the college football is moving more towards an NFL type of just diagram in general. So we'll see how it all works out. But like we keep saying, it's going to be good for the fans because it creates more and more good games to watch, and you're not just watching 2 playoff games in a national championship.
Yeah, and I mean, it's producing more games to watch. I
Yeah,
mean, the
exactly,
season's
yeah.
longer. So that's always like I wish the season was all year. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's great. It's extending that, and you're gonna get to see games that you never thought was possible before, and
Right.
that's what's really gonna be special about it. I think that's the pushing factor for them is they're gonna make a lot more money off of those playoff games because you're gonna get to see teams playing each other that you never thought would ever play each other.
Right, like a 12 seed Liberty who's 12-0 versus a 5 seed like 3-loss Alabama team or something, just
Yeah.
something like that, like
Yeah.
an SEC team.
So does it work like do the top 2 or the top 4 get a bye in the first round, or does every single person have to play a first round
Now that you say
first
that,
round matchup?
I don't know. I know the conference champions. There's something to do with the conference champions getting automatic bids in certain seeds. It's like the top 4 conference champions, and then the rest of them are just kind of fill-in teams. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be set up. It's just going to have to be, like I said earlier, just a trial and error kind of year. And I think if they like the format, then they'll keep it. If they don't, they could possibly change. We'll see. There's a lot of new rule changes coming in the college football world this year. I've heard the 2-minute warning. That's going to happen. That's crazy. Like I keep saying, it's more like the NFL now. It's just how it's trajecting.
And I feel like they kind of got to treat it that way now because the money market's just as big. The players are getting paid. It is essentially the G League to the NFL at this point. It's no longer college football. I mean, you're obviously representing your university, which is a great thing, but the total business aspect of it is essentially the same as the NFL. It's just going to be great getting 12 teams to play in a tournament at the end of the year. I mean, like you could see like a Oregon Texas game in the first round. Like that's just gonna be nonstop entertainment.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The only one thing that I'm worried about, and I don't think this will happen because I think college football is always going to be this way. I just hope that it doesn't take away from the authenticity and the passion that it is inside of college football. Because for me personally, that's what separates college football and the NFL. I've always been a college football guy over the NFL. But hopefully this new format and all the new changes that are coming, hopefully it doesn't change that much about college football, but I don't think it will. I hope it doesn't, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, like you said, college football has its own, we'll say, energy of sorts. I mean, it's the rivalries. It's the pregame traditions of all the universities. It's the fans of each university and how every time you go for every single game you watch is a completely different atmosphere and a completely different feel, which is not something that you see in the NFL.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. But anyway, I think that's going to be all we talk about for today. Seems to be all the time we have. Thank you for tuning into this podcast. This one is audio only, so it'll be on Spotify, maybe YouTube. I don't know. I've not really made that decision yet. But, Cason, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.